Tell me why it matters and what reaction you've had from men.
Okay, well, firstly, in Islam, ritual prayer is such an integral part of a Muslim's religious experience. And we believe Muslim prayer is a very direct connection to God. And so the imam role, or the leadership role in prayer, is, though it's functionary, it's very symbolic when we say it can only be taken, only men can do it. And so for us, we see there's this disparity between God's justice, as revealed in the Quran and in the Muslim scripture, and the social experience of women in mosques and in prayer spaces in the UK and in the world today.
And so very briefly, I mean, are men positive about this? Do you think you're making headway with getting leadership roles in a way?
Actually, I think we've had fantastic support from both men and women. I mean, we've got a Twitter account, we've got a Facebook account, and I would say the majority of the comments are positive comments saying, thank God you're here, we love to see what you're doing. I realise it's not as blanket and it's not as simple as that, but we've had some fantastic response.
OK, Halima, thank you. Benjamin first. It's not all going to be solved with the Twitter account, but it's an interesting start.
It will help.
I think one thing I know about religions, when they come along, at the time, they're always revolutionary. You know, Judaism, Islam was very revolutionary. People have this idea that it was oppressing women. It was liberating women at the time. If you were in that region and you were born a girl, they'd kill you before Islam came along in certain parts of Asia. And I think churches just have to be revolutionary now. I think God wants us to be revolutionary and look at the reality.
Culture can take over, can't it? You can look at the things that in their day were revolutionary, like Jesus. The way he treated women was incredible.
Amazing.
You know, Jesus talking to the woman at the well,
weren't they?
They were, but in that day, women weren't actually able to get the education that would have enabled them to become rabbis.
I'm just intrigued, Angela. You don't see any reason to think that your status today, to be out of the home, to be allowed to be a prominent person in public life, that might be linked to the fact that, you know, the status of women has changed in society, and maybe religions should acknowledge that in a different way.
We're politicising religion. I mean, women in, I keep coming back to Judaism because obviously that's what I know about best in terms of religious debate. Women are exalted in Judaism.
But we are
absolutely respected for what we do.
In a theocratic state, Angela, what do you think your status would be?
It doesn't bother me that my communal leaders are men. I don't feel in any way diminished by the fact that my rabbis are rabbis. A rabbi has a wife that I could go to if it was an inherently female issue that I needed to discuss. She has a critical role in the community. It's just different. And the problem with the equality debate is that it always wants to equate men and women as being, sorry about the cliche, but the absolute level playing field. Men and women are different. And in terms of this particular discussion, this is about history and tradition and traditional interpretation. No, but it's an important
made that point, Angela.
We're going to pass it on to generations.
Other panellists also then suggest what is the way forward. I mean, can you see a situation where women hold leadership roles in faith? And do you think it would really make a difference? I mean, maybe a comparison with banks, where people say that terrible economic crash wouldn't have happened if we'd had more women running those institutions.
Women and men are different, but that doesn't mean they can't be equal. And I do think that having women run the church or become part of running churches and mosques doesn't mean there's going to be a feminist revolution, and you know, it doesn't mean, you know, everything's going to be perfect, but it will mean it has a more it'll be a more representative organisation, and that can only be good.
Very briefly,
it can.
Vicky,
I mean, there's still so much work for feminism to do, and religion should be one of the key places where women are allowed to be themselves. You know, if this is about God and creating, you know, people in His image to fulfil their whole potential, religion should be leading the way, and women being released.
And it's still a really, really lively
But we're not
debate,
disenfranchised by it. You know, there is no clamour in Orthodox Judaism for female rabbis. I mean, there are lots of
among
very
feminist Jewish people.
Reform or Orthodox?
Reform is different. Sadly, we'll have to leave it there. But thank you so much for your very frank views on an issue which I suspect we'll still be debating in a few years from now. Now, for centuries, pilgrimage was one of the greatest adventures on earth, involving risking life and limb, travelling across this country, and epic journeys abroad. The new BBC 2 series, Pilgrimage with Simon Reeve, follows in the footsteps of the early pilgrims and meets their modern successors. Simon's been talking to us about what he discovered and the effect on him personally.
My journey takes me from the north of England to Canterbury, then through France into northern Spain, across the Alps to Italy, and on to the eternal city, Rome! I travel east into Turkey, across the Mediterranean into the Holy Land, and on to my final destination, Jerusalem. It's a gobsmacker, it's a breath taker awayer. think the reason people are going on pilgrimages now is because they are looking for some sort of purpose and meaning in our life that is lost from even an everyday religious experience, but certainly from everyday life for secular folk like me. And that was part of what fascinated me and drew me to this subject in the first place, the idea that our ancestors really aren't all that different from us. They wanted to get out and about and have an exciting time, frankly. 700 years ago, Lincoln was one of the largest cities in Britain. It was also a major centre of pilgrimage, with travellers coming from across the land to visit one of the great wonders of the age.
It's spectacular. Just imagine the holy shock a medieval pilgrim would have felt arriving here for the first time and seeing a building of this size, of this scale.
The sense of achievement that you get from completing what we might loosely term a pilgrimage, I think can be enormous. If you have trekked now in the 21st century across northern Spain, for example, then arriving in Santiago de Compostela, as tens of thousands of people are doing now every year, is an event in your life that you are never going to forget.
Look at it. The light streaming down, it looks ethereal. I feel, as a person without faith, I feel in the presence of something holy.
It was very moving for me as a non-religious person, or at least a person whose faith has lapsed, to be allowed, actually, the opportunity to get up close with the fundamental beliefs and hopes of us, really. I was very keen to learn about the more rigorous, tougher aspects of pilgrimage and find out how our hardy ancestors did it. There are numerous accounts of pilgrims crossing the Alps who lost their companions to avalanches or exposure. The snow here can be 10 metres deep in winter, and the temperature drops to -30 centigrade. In the 10th century, even an Archbishop of Canterbury froze to death here while making a pilgrimage to Rome. I met some incredibly memorable characters along the journey. One of the people who really does spring to mind, though, is a chap called David. American. He was a former drug addict, and I met him wearing a biblical outfit in a biblically inspired and biblically themed village inside the modern town of Nazareth.
My own path was very self-centered and led me to the point of death. I overdosed on drugs. I was actually dying in a hospital.
Look at you now.
Yeah, a little bit heavier, a little bit healthier. It led me from wearing pants to wearing a dress every day. It's kind of fantastic.
There were several moments on the journey when I became very emotional. So much of who we are, that is where it is from. And that is an incredible thing.
For my family and friends and for travellers.
I think a journey in and of itself can be a magnificent thing. I think from the journeys I've been doing for the last few years, I myself have got a great sense of identity and meaning from them. I think that's what a lot of us are looking for in our lives, and I think pilgrimage can offer that, whether you're a believer or not.
Pilgrimage with Simon Reeves on at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 3rd of December on BBC Two. Now, you've been voting in our text and online vote today. Is immigration good for Britain? Here's what you told us. 11% of those of you who voted said yes, it is, and 89% said no, it isn't. Some of your comments from home. William says, the NHS cannot cope with the people living here already, so why bring in more? Penny says, we are still in an economic recession and jobs are few and far between. We can't support any more people. Karen says, Eastern European migrants coming here will be coming to work hard, not claim benefits. And Matt says, immigration has made Britain. I couldn't think of anything worse than living in a homogenised monoculture. we know that these things are not scientific polls, but there is this concern, and we've seen it there. Vicky, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a real shame. You know, in the Christian tradition, God says that there's a real impetus on us to welcome the foreigner, to welcome the stranger, and that is the sign of a good society. So if we're really that anti, that kind of closed in our mindset, I think that says a lot about us, and it worries me.
I think it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy. There are certain fear factors that are being peddled and repeddled, and I think that is possibly a knee-jerk reaction to the context and the times in which we live, the austerity and the fear about what's going to happen come January. And people are very much reacting to the here and now rather than looking to as a broader issue about can immigration enrich our culture and society.
Benjamin,
yes, I think those, certainly the responses you just read were about the new wave, if you like, of what's going to happen next year. Somebody talked about the National Health Service. If immigration is bad for Britain, is the National Health Service bad? Is our bus service that bad? You know, are our nurses that bad? Is our language that bad? I mean, immigration is what made Britain. And I think people shouldn't confuse the issues and be frightened by what can happen in the future. We've got to manage things just like we've got to manage our lives.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you all very much indeed. Thank you to everyone who's taken part in today's discussions, to my webcammers, to my guests in the studio, Vicky Beeching, Benjamin Zephaniah and Angela Epstein. And thank you to you for your texts and calls. Please don't text or call the phone lines anymore, they are now closed. But continue the conversation online, the links are all on our website. That's it for Sunday Morning Live for this series. Next week, Fern Britton meets Susan Boyle, who went from a talent show to a global superstar. But from me, SAMIRA AHMED, and from everyone who works on the Sunday Morning Live team, thank you very much for your company. Goodbye.